Why does Shin have a Padwan braid in the Ahsoka show? Well, in the Ahsoka show that premiered on Tuesday, we got a look at most of the villains that we'll see throughout the show. But one thing jumped out at me. Why does Shin, the apprentice to Balin, have a Jedi Padawan braid? First, I want to say that I thought the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka were great. And while I do have some problems with them, I would give them both 9 out of 10s. I think this show is going in the right direction, and I think the positivity surrounding the show is because it just seems like, from the first 2 episodes, that this is a competent story. Dave Filoni is great at Lucasfilm, and fans like me can already start to see where this show is going. The first 2 episodes were easy to follow, just like George Lucas' Star Wars and The Clone Wars. Just basically everything that Dave Filoni puts his hands into is truly amazing, and I'm sure this show will be too. I do have 2 breakdowns on my channel for the first 2 episodes, so make sure you do check those out after this video. And if you don't know what a Jedi Padawan braid is, it's basically a braid that all Jedi Padawan learners in the Jedi Order would wear, and they would cut it off when they became a Jedi Knight. Okay, so I have some theories on why Shin has a Padawan braid. The first lame one is maybe it's just for style. This could just be the appearance that Shin wants, but I doubt that Dave Filoni would give her a Jedi Padawan braid and make the reason behind it just a fashion thing. That would be a big letdown, and I don't think Dave would put such an interesting detail on Shin and for it just to be basically nothing. Now here's what I actually think the reason is for her wearing this braid. The answer to this may be explored as the season goes on, but for now, there's lots of hints on why she would wear this braid. And what's really interesting is I don't think that her wearing the braid is by choice. I believe that it's something that Balin made her do, and I'll tell you why. I believe that Balin is sort of a Jedi sympathizer. As we all knew, he was formerly a Jedi, and I think that he's not the terrible guy that you might think. There's 3 reasons for this, and one is from Dave Filoni himself. Dave says that Balin and Shin having more orangey lightsaber colors is intentional. If you notice in episode 2, the masked Black Knight character has a red lightsaber, while Balin and Shin have these lighter red or darker orange sabers. And with Dave saying that this was on purpose, here's what I think. So if you don't know, Sith bleed their crystals. So they take a Jedi's weapon, usually their own former Jedi saber, and they basically sit near it, and their anger radiates into this crystal, making it turn red. I think for Balin and Shin, when they bled their crystals, they weren't totally angry and they weren't totally Sith, resulting in these orangey lightsabers. This idea is certainly new. In a comic, Vader dreamed about bleeding his lightsaber crystal and him not being evil enough so his blue lightsaber never changed red. So I was under the belief, because of this comic, that if you weren't angry enough, your lightsaber wouldn't actually change colors at all. Now, Kylo Ren's lightsaber is a little orange as well. It's still red, but it's a lighter tone of red. But I just think that's JJ being stupid. So if my theory is right, this is a new idea that Dave is coming up with that shows that Balin and Shin aren't as evil as we think. There are 2 more reasons that would also suggest this. One being that in the first scene of episode 1, when Balin and Shin infiltrate the Republic ship to get Morgan, they didn't just immediately kill these Republic officers. Of course, they had to lie to the captain to get onto the ship, but once they were on the ship, they could have just rolled down the ramp and started killing everyone. But they didn't. Balin requested to see the prisoner and even tried multiple times to convince the captain that they were Jedi. He clearly didn't want to kill innocent lives, and that's another reason why he might not be this terrible guy that we think he is. Now, the last biggest reason that Balin might not be the bad guy that he's made out to be is that in the final scene in episode 2 of the Ahsoka show, he tells Morgan Elsbeth that it would be a shame if Ahsoka died because there's so little Force users left. This is irrefutable, direct evidence that he still likes the Jedi. Of course, his sympathy to Ahsoka might change when they battle, but it's interesting that he feels this way towards Ahsoka. Remember, they are just guns for hire, basically, and Balin and Shin really have no quarrel in this war. They just get paid to do their job. So with all three of these major reasons, I do believe that Balin and Shin aren't Sith right now. You could probably classify them as Dark Jedi, but I do believe that they will both turn back to the light, even if one of them dies. I think the reason Shin wears this Jedi braid is because Balin has massive respect for the Order, and still follows the rituals and the culture of being a Jedi. See, I think at the end of the day, Balin and Shin aren't bad people. Balin probably just became a knight when the Order fell, and he probably fought in the Clone Wars as a Padawan. He probably fled to the unknown regions of the galaxy and needed some way to get credits. And of course, he had a lightsaber, so he just became a gun for hire. And somehow, along that road, he picked up Shin. And they became a master and apprentice, and they got paid a lot for their talents. They are different than Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth. While we don't know much about Shin, I'm sure she has a softer tone similar to her master. Near the end of episode 2, when Elsbeth was using her witchcraft to open the map, Balin looked shocked and maybe even frightened. I think that Balin and Shin just work for money and they got in too deep, and now they're on this journey. But I do believe one of them will turn to the light side at some point. Again, Star Wars, as George described it, and of course paraphrasing, it's not just about good versus evil. It's about people who have the choice to be good or evil, and where that leads them. This show seems like it's clear and concise on purpose. There are many ways this show can end, but it's already shaping up to be peak Star Wars. I believe this is also because George has said Star Wars is about families. And while there's no real bloodline families in this show, there are master and apprentice relationships between Balin and Shin, and Ahsoka and Sabine. And not only that, we will at some point see the whole Ghost Squadron of Sabine, Zeb, Hera, Ezra together again. They are basically a family, and the show checks all the boxes of good Star Wars already. A clear plot, character development, which we've already seen a lot from Sabine, lightsabers, sorry to the 8 Andor fans, good and evil in clear ways where there's a choice between the two. Music, of course, and I could go on. These are, in my opinion, crucial categories that need to be checked for a good Star Wars project. So to wrap it up, I am invested in the antagonists of this show, mostly Thrawn, but I'm also interested in the character of Shin. She doesn't speak much, but she seems very ominous, and her acting is great, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about her character. This show will be, most likely, the best show in Disney Star Wars, and I can say that after 2 episodes, because it has a clear story, and that's just so underrated these days at Lucasfilm. Shows like the Book of Boba Fett and the Obi-Wan show were just a mix of ideas that then were executed by many different people, which led to terrible disasters of shows. Now, Dave isn't directing the whole show. I understand that, but he has written the whole show, and he has continuously talked in interviews about how this show will push the characters forward and honor George Lucas. He cares about Star Wars more than anyone else at Lucasfilm, and I can almost guarantee that he will not let us down. However, there are some things that scare me that could happen to this show. My biggest fear is that Kathleen Kennedy or executives at Lucasfilm, or even Disney executives, will interfere and mess with this show for toy sales or some benefit. Unlike the Book of Boba Fett show, which basically just seemed to be made by Disney executives just to get Grogu back to Mando, this Dave show doesn't hold these warning signs quite yet. While we have only seen 2 episodes, it's very apparent that no one at Disney could mess with the story of the show. Sure, they could do small amounts of tinkering, but they really can't change the story to the show to fit their narrative because Dave has already set the foundation of the show and we already have a good idea where this show is going to take us. While we don't know how it's going to end, We know that we will see Thrawn and Ezra. We don't know if Ezra will be good or bad, but we do know that no matter what, there will be some conflict between the Ghost Squadron and the New Republic against Thrawn. We can already tell, like I've explained in this video, that Balin and Shin are more interesting than just Sith, and their characters will change. What I just listed are all reasonable assumptions that anyone can figure out and get behind. Everyone has a general idea of where this story is going to go, and it doesn't seem that Disney would have any wiggle room to possibly inject their big ideals into this show. If any weird story moments happen, writing script-wise, we know that it would be Dave who made those decisions. The reason the Book of Boba Fett show was about Mando is because Disney needed to forcefully put Mando and Grogu back together. It seems they had an agenda, and sadly, John's show was the target. Now, many say that this is also possible for the Ahsoka show because Disney probably wants to incorporate this show to the sequels, and I totally disagree. They would have no reason to try to connect this show to the sequels, because if they did, fans would raise questions on why these characters aren't in the sequel trilogy. It's safe to assume that at some point, Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine, Hera, etc. are all in this other galaxy called the New Beyond. Connecting this show to the sequels would be a mistake, and I'm pretty sure Lucasfilm will not attempt it. I am weary that they will make small tweaks to the show. One small change that they may have made to Dave's project was Sabine being stabbed. I don't think Dave would have made that decision. I think he would have cut Sabine's hand off instead of her being stabbed. I think this ruins Qui-Gon's death, and I don't think Dave actually made this decision. I believe Kathleen Kennedy made him do this to try to normalize Reva being stabbed twice. I don't like it, and I hope Disney doesn't tinker with small things like that. At the end of the day, I'm so invested in this show, and my favorite characters so far are Balin and Shin, and I'm excited for their futures. And in my opinion, Balin makes her wear this braid because he respects these Jedi, and I think that's interesting for a Sith, quote-unquote Sith. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and hit the subscribe button. Thank you.